So in general, in the GRE, whenever you see expressions that kind of look ugly and you have to compare them, we know that certainly plugging in numbers would be a lot of work. And the way these questions are written is that there are always some clean way to manipulate these expressions so that it's easier to decide which quantity is greater. So you should always go in that direction. Certainly in some cases you do have to select example values to see what's happening, or if you're not able to manipulate expressions, then you can't really go forward. But that's what I'm going to do in this particular problem. So first thing is, you'll notice this is a minus x. Try to make everything positive. So I'm going to multiply both numerator and denominator by minus 1. So that will become x minus 1 over x. Now you'll see that this piece is the same on both sides. And we also know x is greater than 1, which means that x minus 1 would be greater than 0. It's a positive number. And when you're comparing two quantities in this column A, column B format, you can divide by a positive number. It's not going to change their relative ranking. So if I divide both sides by x minus 1, column A becomes 1 over y. This is 1 over x. Now again, both x and y are positive, so I can also multiply, or rather in this case, I'm just do the cross multiplication. This is x, this is y. The reason I can do this immediately is that the longer step is you multiply both sides by y. That becomes 1. That becomes y over x. Then I multiply both sides by x. That would become x. This is y. So instead of doing those steps, I just did it in one shot. And the key reason you can do that is because these quantities are positive. So when you're dividing both sides by positive numbers, their relative comparison remains the same. The actual magnitude of the numbers or quantities changes, but their relative comparison remains the same. So we end up with column A being equivalent to x and B equivalent to y, and we're already given that x is greater than y, so we know that quantity A is greater, and the answer is A. Now going back to, if you were not able to do any of this, then you would have to resort to plugging in numbers, and that will be some work, but what I would say is if you select, let's say, 2, 3 different numbers, so what I would recommend trying, say, 1.03 and 1.01 for x and y, and then perhaps 3 and 2, and maybe some large numbers like 10 and 9. Of course, in all these three cases, you will find the column A to be greater, and at that point I would say just pick A, even though there is a possibility that that could be the wrong answer. So that's kind of the drawback of when you have to select specific values. You're only sampling a few values, and that's no guarantee that you will get the right answer, but that's the best you can do in that case. So to summarize, the answer here is A.